Listen in as I chat with Chris Taylor of Actionable Books, which up until recently was run from a cave in Spain.
Welcome to the Small Business Big Marketing Show, where successful small business owners share their secrets to take your marketing to the next level. Now here's your host, Tim Reid.
G'day listeners, and welcome back to another episode of Australia's #1 marketing show. I am your host, Timbo Reid. But you, so much more importantly, are a motivated small business owner ready to crank out some great marketing. And to that end, let's get stuck right in.
Small Business Big Marketing with Tim Reid.
Now, what I should have said was it's not only Australia's #1 marketing show, it's New Zealand's #1 marketing show every now and then on the iTunes store as well. And that's particularly appropriate because I am sitting in a car in Queenstown, New Zealand, right now. Yep. How's that? That is one strange place to podcast. Probably not that strange, but yeah, I'm sitting on the Esplanade, whatever that main road is. I'm looking out onto the beautiful Queenstown Lake. There are mountains capped with snow, the Remarkables, Coronet Peak. There are people going past on what are they called? Jet boats, and there's people parachuting from the sky. This place is amazing. Why am I sitting in a car in Queenstown? Because my hotel room is noisy. Yep. The kids next door are screaming. Not mine, someone's kids. And I figured maybe a car will be quieter. So I'm quite liking the acoustic. Now, you might have, if you listened to last week's show, I am traveling a lot anyway. Punching out a weekly episode, which is what I do, sometimes comes with its challenges due to my timing and travel schedule. So I'm actually talking at a conference in Queenstown. And what an amazing, amazing place. Boy, oh boy, there are so many marketing lessons here. Everything is about experience in Queenstown. And if you're building experience into your business, then you are probably doing okay. Interviewed a few business owners that offer experiences. Brad Smith from Brap, Miss Chu from Miss Chu Vietnamese Tuck Shops. They offer experiences. Have a listen to those and you'll hear what I mean. Very, very big show today. Got Chris Taylor from Actionable Books, who has been running his business out of a cave in Spain up until very recently. I want to share something that happened earlier this week at a keynote I gave in Melbourne, which was kind of interesting. Lessons to be learned from that. And we'll get stuck into our interview very shortly. But first, let me tell you about the very good folk at Net Registry. You see, Net Registry are there to help you nail all your online marketing needs, and some you didn't even know you had. So like whether it's registering a domain name, website design and hosting, helping you get found on Google, they can even set you up with an email marketing campaign. You've got to love that, because I know how many small business owners do struggle with the old email marketing. Now, ensuring you have a decent digital footprint is critical in marketing your business, and that goes way beyond having a website team. You know that by now if you're a long-time listener to this show. Having a website is just the start. So head over to Net Registry today and see how they can get your online marketing sorted. It'll be much cheaper and easier than you think. netregistry.com.au is where you'll find them, and tell them Timbo sent you. Righto, so earlier this week, I was the opening keynote speaker at the Real Estate Institute of Victoria's conference at Crown Casino in Melbourne. There was a few hundred real estate agents eagerly awaiting some marketing goodness from me. So, as usual, I rolled up to the venue early. Beautiful venue, really, really impressive venue. And the Real Estate Institute had put on such a big effort to make a great conference and expo. So I roll up a couple of hours early, as I do. Always like to get the AV sorted, the audio-visual stuff sorted. Make sure my slide deck looks beautiful up on the screens. Make sure the embedded videos are working, that we can hear them, we can see them, that my clicker's working. I do a sound check. Do all the stuff that you want to, so that all those kind of worry points, those pain points are removed, and you can just completely focus on sharing quality content. Everything didn't go to plan, unfortunately. Now, it wasn't my fault, but it was my problem that the AV guys just couldn't get the technical stuff working. And with literally 2 minutes to go my slide deck is not appearing on the big screens around the venue, which means I don't really have a keynote because my slide deck has lots and lots of marketing case studies, helpful marketing case studies embedded in it. And I really need them. I need to be able to show them. I can still talk about the concept of helpful marketing and do all that type of stuff, but visually I need to show people some examples so they can see how it applies to their business. So 2 minutes in, before I'm about to go on, the MC is starting to introduce me and they are still trying to get the slideshow working. At that point, I tapped the client, lovely lady, tapped her on the shoulder and said, listen, let's go to plan B, and plan B is that we are going to do a Q&A, question and answer session. So we got 3 roving mics situated throughout. It was a really large room, situated throughout the room, and as I'm being introduced, those mics are getting into position. I walk up on stage and drop the bad news that there is no keynote talk, but I am going to do a Q&A. And look, the bottom line is it went really, really well. Thankfully, sometimes with Q&As, people are scared to put up their hand. Thankfully, people did put up their hand, and they were wonderful questions. So I kind of worked out a couple of learnings. One is be prepared for worst-case scenario. Don't panic. Take a step back. I took a step back. Everyone was going crazy around me beforehand, trying to get this problem sorted. I just stepped back. I took some deep breaths, knew I knew my stuff, acknowledged to myself that I knew my stuff, and did the Q&A. And that was really a wonderful kind of reward for me to say, yeah, okay, I can do that. There's another little string to my bow. Secondly, and more importantly, it was wonderful for the audience because they're having questions answered that are absolutely on their mind. Now, my keynote, I would hope, answers questions that are on the mind of motivated small business owners as well, but this was absolutely tailor-made. And what I noticed too is that as people were asking questions, I was integrating elements of my keynote into the discussion anyway. So, yeah, really good learning, I guess, for all of us. Acknowledge more often that we know our stuff. Back yourself when the chips are looking you down. And is that a phrase? When the chips are down, and just go for it. And if and when you do succeed, and chances are you will, give yourself a pat on the back and acknowledge a little achievement. We don't do it enough. In fact, inside the Small Business Big Marketing Forum, we have a little section called the Winner's Circle, where I love members sharing their big and their small wins, because it makes us feel good. You get acknowledged by your peers. And, you know, as small business owners, often we're operating in a bit of a vacuum. So, yeah, there's a little learning, something that happened earlier this week, and it all went tickety-boo. Okay, listeners, because I'm sitting in a car in Queenstown watching the snowfall, which it is, I am going to get stuck straight into today's guest and get on with the rest of the show. Now, I got an email recently from a Kira Hug. What a lovely name, Kira Hug. And she said, "Dear John Keating, I mean Tim Reid, I am a Dead Poets Society fan too." Yeah, you would have heard me speak previously about loving that character, John Keating, in Dead Poets Society. Kira says, "I'm a new listener and fellow marketing junkie." Well, welcome, Kira. Your conversation with Ryan Clark is one of my favourites. Hilarious opening question. Oh, that was a few episodes back. Anyway, if you're looking for a radical entrepreneur for your show, I recommend Chris Taylor, founder of Actionable Books. I'm biased because I also work with him. Here's some reasons why you should consider Chris. This is good. This is a really good approach. Get a lot of approaches from people wanting to be interviewed on the show, and Kira gave me some really solid reasons why. Number one was he has failed a lot. He founded Actionable Books after failing in another business, going back to the drawing board and committing, wait for this, to reading 52 business development books in 52 weeks and applying one concept from each into his life. And that's how Actionable Books started. Isn't that a great idea? Number two, the business runs on a results-only work environment as comprised of 6 staff, 24 independent contractors, and 76 volunteers spanning 6 countries and 9 time zones. Hey, that's breaking some rules. She also says Actionable Books now boasts over 500 free and actionable book summaries, including a community of entrepreneurs who want to change their lives. Number 4, Chris runs his business from a cave in Spain. Love that. That caught my attention. You'll find out very shortly he's just moved out of the cave onto an olive farm above ground. And I just thought it sounded like a really, really interesting interview. Kira suggested he would be a good fit for the show. You are spot on, Kira. And then she says, P.S. Chris has interviewed Seth Godin and Gary Vaynerchuk. And don't worry, team, I ask how on earth he got in front of them. Enough from me. Here is Chris Taylor from Actionable Books. Now, I understand you live in a cave in Spain. True or false?
True up until 3 months ago, and we've since come out into the sunlight into a big farmhouse in Spain.
A big farmhouse in Spain?
We were there for 9 months.
Well, just imagining that you were still 4 months ago in the cave in Spain. What was that about?
It was, it was really interesting, Tim. My wife, there's a long backstory, but as my dad would say, it's a 3-beer story that we'll simplify down to a couple sentences. My wife and I were over here in 2012 in Spain and just fell in love with this particular region, and so started looking at what we could do to get back here for a period of time. And we found this big, beautiful house, big 5-bedroom house. It was very reasonably priced, down right by the sea, and we were all set, ready to move in, an above ground house. And then about a month and a half before we made the move, the owners decided to sell the property and told us at the 11th hour. And so we scrambled. My wife started doing she's an exceptionally talented Google researcher, I've learned. And she found this house it was a self-sufficient house, so off the grid, and it was, in order to stay cool in the summer and warm in the winter, was actually built into the side of a mountain. And so it was this amazing place where it felt light and airy, and I mean, it had 16-foot ceilings, but it was truly a cave and built into the side of a mountain. So that's where we were.
Out of interest, what was the internet connection like in a cave?
Surprisingly better than it is in the farmhouse that we're in now. So they had it all figured out. It was great. Yeah.
So Fred and Barney would have been quite okay.
Absolutely.
I love it, mate. Oh, that's fantastic. Why did you move to Spain in the first place?
When I started Actionable Books, Tim, there was really 2 criteria for me. One was that we would have a derivative-based business, meaning we could produce and sell the same thing over and over again. And the second was that it would allow me to be geographically free. 5 years into the business, I'd never really tested that for any length of time, the second part. We just loved Spain, Amy and I, my wife. And so we said, if we're going to do it, let's do it to a place that we're just that excited to be in. And we, a couple of false starts, but made the move here in September 2013 and haven't looked back since.
Interesting. Just explain, I haven't heard the term. I've heard the concept of selling the same thing over and over again, but derivative-based business?
It's my language. Yeah, I don't know if it's a common, widespread term, but that's how I describe it.
So that is the selling the same thing. So generally, derivative-based businesses are online, or is it like Actionable Books is a derivative-based business?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's mostly digital products in the sense that, one person buying it doesn't deplete your stock.
Yeah.
Is the way that I sort of look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And was Actionable Books, because, let's get into Actionable Books. I was going to kind of keep that powder dry, but we're kind of there, and it is interesting. So that's why you're here. So let's just explain what Actionable Books is to the listener.
So if TED Talks are ideas worth spreading, Actionable Books are ideas worth implementing. Our focus is around...
Hey, have you worked on that pitch?
That was, my wife came up with that. She's getting all the credit in this conversation, but my wife came up with that a few months ago, and I thought, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. And so we've been playing with it a little bit.
But that's so powerful. Can I just, I'll just pull you up there, because getting your pitch right like that and comparing it to something that we already know and love is just a really powerful thing to do. And I'm not sure, I've spoken about this before, Chris, but how many business owners do we come across that trip over what they do? When asked what they do, they kind of freak out.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and I think that's why I was really excited when Amy came up with that, because I was that guy. I would spend 20 minutes trying to explain what we did and watch people's eyes glaze over at various speeds. And so find that this now intrigues people enough that we can then go a little bit deper if they want to.
Well, just to that end, mate, I think, can you put Amy on the phone? Because clearly she's much smarter than you.
Well, that'll be the sequel. She's out wandering the grounds. I think.
Bless her. She got a wicker basket and wearing some kind of lace, Spanish dress. Because that's what they do over. That's what you just do. You kind of live the life, don't you?
Absolutely right. Yeah, I'm looking at the olive trees right now. It's
you're killing me.
Place.
You're killing, I digress, but it is important to get your pitch right, and you nailed it with that one. So well done. So okay, if Ted's idea is worth spreading, Actionable Books ideas worth implementing, how does that show itself?
So we connect with top-selling business authors, authors of popular business books, and we will disseminate ideas from those books and serve them up in bite-sized quantities for people to easily put into practice in their busy lives. So we do that through tools and products for individuals, for teams, and for large-scale enterprise organizations. On a very high level, we do free business book summaries. I saw you were poking around in there earlier today, Tim, and I love that.
How did you see that? Because I left a comment on one of the blogs.
Because you left a comment. And when you left it on the one Talk Like Ted, I thought, I think we're going to have a great conversation.
Correct. Well, it's fantastic. So that's interesting. So at a high level, any of us can go to Actionable Books and pretty much read a very, very short summary of what the book's intention is. And then it looks like you then get a top 3 action points to implement immediately off the back of that. That's your free offer, yeah?
That's right. Yeah, that and the author interviews that I've been doing for a few years now.
Yeah, they're cool. I know they've kind of dried up. That's on your blog. Is that kind of a few months since you've done one?
Well noted. Indeed. We're actually, Tim, working on a podcast right now. And so we're stockpiling the first 24 episodes. So we've moved from video interviews to audio, which is why there's that lull. But you're probably one of about 6 people on the planet to notice that. So thank you for that.
Well, there's a couple of things there. This interview is going to go all over the place and end up at a wonderful place. So let's just go there. Perfect. Because you were quite prolific in the way you were creating these video blogs to promote Actionable Books. Listeners, you can't see it, but what Chris did was he had a split screen, author one side, Chris the other, and they would talk. It was essentially a vodcast, I would call it. I did notice that it had dried up, and I always look at that as a fellow content creator. I think one of the things that we have to do is be consistent, but I pulled someone up on that a few episodes ago. I can't think who it was right now, but they said what they were doing is creating, not episodes, they were creating seasons. So it's like, you could have said that to me. You could have said, we were at the end of season 3, Tim.
That's exactly what it was. We'll go back and edit that, right, Tim? We'll
bullshit.
Put that in there. Make me sound brilliant.
Gotcha. So, okay. So great. So you're going to be doing a podcast. Great. So I'll have another competitor very shortly. No, good on you. We need more podcasters out there. Underdone medium, Chris. Big
Perfect.
Time.
Yes, I agree.
So, Actionable Books then, what fascinates me then is where's the business model?
Yep. So it's a great question. So it started out as a hobby, as a passion project. It was really me writing these summaries for a personal accountability vehicle. And it was it wasn't meant to be a business originally, Tim. I was working in corporate marketing and I was enjoying myself. And, it was never, I said marketing, not advertising. I do draw a distinction between the two.
You said corporate though.
That's right. It was an interesting space, and I don't think I would have been happy staying there, but I was, 25 and enjoyed the experience. But people started to ask for more robust versions of the summaries. They said, this is great, but as you said, Tim, it's short. It's, succinct. I want something that I can go a little bit deeper on. Do you have anything that I can use with my team? And I had that question come up more than a couple times. Excuse me. And so I said, yeah, I can create something. My background before Actionable and before the corporate marketing was I was a sales manager and recruiter and trainer for a direct sales company in Canada. And the one thing that I had done really well was retain my people. I was crap at just about every other part of the business, but I was really good at keeping my people around. And I did that through these.
How'd you do that?
Well, thank you for the leading question, Tim.
Yeah.
I would spend an hour a week with my top people where we would talk about personal and professional development, not product, not sales. It was all about them and how this job was helping them to achieve more in their own lives. And that format worked really well. And so basically the idea there, right, is that if people feel like their job is advancing their life, then they're more likely to stick around at their job. It's not rocket science, but it's amazing how few managers actually sort of make that connection or choose to put that effort in.
Role play me. Just humour me for 1 minute, Chris. I'm an unhappy employee at Actionable Books, and you've tapped me on the shoulder and said, I hope you realise, Tim, that this job is adding to your life.
Maybe not in that particular order. I think this is, we'll deviate here for a second, and then I promise I'll get back to how we make money. Yeah. But I think this is one of the problems, is that as managers, small business or otherwise, we tend to wait until that employee is unhappy and then start to justify or, start throwing more money at them or whatever, if there's someone we want to keep. And I don't think it does a lot to bring people forward into that proactively engaged role. I think it just, maybe brings them back to status quo, but more often than not, it's that whole squeaky wheel gets the grease, then, your whiners are getting your attention. So Tim, if you were ready to walk from Actionable, I'm actually probably not going to do much to keep you around, because I've already failed in my mind at that point.
Gotcha.
And I'm going to spend way more time with my top performers and not even top performers, just the people that I see the most potential in, and work to see what it is that they're looking to accomplish or do, either within Actionable or otherwise, and then support that as best I can.
Yeah, love it. Good response. How do you make money?
We sell a tool called Actionable Workshops. Uh-huh. And team leaders use those workshops. They're hour-long learning modules, just like I used in my previous life. But they're inspired by the ideas from top business books, and they're designed to engage a team in conversation. So a leader can access it and run it without bringing in a professional facilitator. Nothing wrong with professional facilitators, but sometimes you don't have the time or the money. And so this becomes a tool for engaging deeper, richer conversation within a team, large and small.
So the team leader at a business in Boston finds you online, pays to download a 1 hour actionable workshop around a particular book and runs it themselves. Is that it?
That's correct.
Okay, that then begs the question. I get that now. I get that's love it. You can run it from an olive field in Spain and have team leaders all over the world doing this. This is a wonderful business. Tell me so many questions just pop up. What's that team leader Googling to find you? Because this is a good idea, but I'm, as a team leader of which I've been, I might Google, I don't know, team building exercises. Mm-hmm. Have you just got an unbelievably sophisticated SEO strategy happening, a pay-per-click strategy? What are you doing?
Yeah, it's actually an incredibly unsophisticated strategy that's working fairly well, which is, I just try to trip and fall into these things as often as I can, Tim. It's the summaries, mate. It's the fact that just people that are into business books, when they do a Google search for Good to Great or 7 Habits or Quiet or any more recent book, we're right up there. We're usually on the first page globally for that summary. And anybody that comes, it's keyword focus within that summary. We've thankfully grown. So, we're a fairly trusted source as a site in general. A lot of link backs, a lot of syndication where people are leveraging our summaries and reposting them, which we gladly encourage. And time. it's been 6 years.
Right. So just so listeners, okay, yeah. So 6 years, trusted site, great PR, great page ranking with Google. Just so listeners, because I haven't kind of had this geeky conversation, Chris, on the show, and it's kind of important, but it's hard not, when you get under the hood like this, it's hard not to kind of geek people out. But basically, I'm going to summarize this and challenge me on it. If you spend time creating an incredibly helpful site, rich in valuable content, not sales content, but I call it helpful marketing, over time, you become a point of reference for people. And when you do post something and you do complete your metadata and you do get your keywords in there, but certainly not keyword stacking or anything, but you do know what you want that page to rank for, then Google are going to look to it quicker and more deeply.
That's right.
Is that
absolutely.
Kind of a good summary?
I think that's a great summary, Tim. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
I think the biggest thing for me, Tim, is that, Google and all search algorithms are just becoming that much more sophisticated, that much more able to see through the bullshit. And they need, am I allowed to say bullshit?
You did.
I did twice. And, as you say, you can't stack rank these things. You can't really force it. It's come about organically for us, where we were providing these summaries because we wanted to provide the summary, not because we wanted to rank well for a certain term. But over time that starts to add up. And now what we've really found is that we have a community of people that are learning what we do, whether it's relevant to them or not. And they become our ambassadors. And, as old school as it sounds, after our geeky conversation, our business is referral driven. And that's where it comes from. Yeah,
brilliant. Do you know, when Google updated their algorithm in October last year in 2013, Chris, with the Hummingbird update, one of the quotes from Matt Cutts at Google was, "Hey, listen, guys, we just want relevant, unique, helpful content produced regularly." And it's kind of like that almost summarizes actionable books.
Thank you.
Helpful, unique, relevant content produced regularly. Boom.
I think it summarizes small business, big marketing too.
Stop it. No, this is not a mutual admiration society. Brilliant. So when you get that up, it gets found. So when someone, let's say the next big book comes out next week, you're onto it. You do a quick summary of it. You get that summary up there. It's getting Google juice from the get-go, as at the same time the author and the publisher are getting it as well.
That's right. And it's a great point. We really try to, when we can, get ahead of that curve or get ahead of that wave, and have the summary up at the same time as the book's going to market, or, get the authors to post our link to their Amazon page, or the publishers to post the interview that I'll do on their page. And those high credibility sources. I mean, if you get Random House or Penguin or something, sending links back to you, they've had URLs since the birth of the internet. And so that provides, a lot of traction for you, for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, isn't it? You tell me, as a business model, another thing that I'm interested in, haven't spoken a lot about on this show, you're a content creator. You're also a curator of content. I think, let me just think that out aloud. Yeah. You have a whole lot of people out in the big wide world. In fact, the number of staff you have, 6 staff, 24 independent contractors, 76 volunteers spanning 6 countries and 9 time zones. I'm not sure how current that information is, but I'm guessing it's something like that. Yeah. You've got a whole lot of people curating content, yeah?
That's right. Well, I was doing a summary a week personally for 2 years. And then my hands started to cramp. I was just sort of reaching that mental fatigue of that pace. And it's a longer story, but this group of volunteers started to emerge. And we're actually closer now to, I guess, closer to 90 contributors that are producing summaries for the site. We're also, as you mentioned, I mean, we're a small team. There's 6 of us, or is there even, I guess there's 5 of us on core quote unquote staff. But then we have this consultant network that's been growing out as well. And that's been really exciting, where we've got effectively licensees of our program that all share this belief in the importance of improving the 21st century workplace and the cultures and relationships that exist within it. And these consultants all over the globe has been a really neat opportunity for expansion as well. So yeah, to your point, we've got content people, we've got delivery people, and we've got staff, and everyone plays in one big happy family.
The idea of content curation, and let me define that for listeners, is taking existing content. So what Chris is doing with Actionable Books is he's taking a book that is existing content, and then you are wrapping, sometimes you could wrap your own opinion around it. What you guys do is really summarize the book in itself. So you're not bringing new ideas to it, but you are curating additional content by wrapping summaries around it. It's it's a really powerful marketing strategy, because I come across small business owners when I talk about this concept of I call it helpful marketing. They think they've got to create everything from scratch, and that just puts the weight of the world on them. Whereas you don't have to do that.
Yeah, I think, to your point, I think you want to do something that provides value on top of the original offering. Otherwise, you're just, sort of a scraping site like a BuzzFeed or something. Nothing against BuzzFeed, terrible. I think to your point, I mean, the idea of adding your own level of value, our summary writers do, they're actually summarizing one idea from the book that most resonated with them, and then 2 ways that they're thinking about applying it. So it's, the step of value that they are providing is to say, there's a whole book. Here's the one idea that most resonated with me. If you disagree, let's have a conversation around it. But here's how I'm planning to apply that. So to your point, I think we just need to put our own spin on it, and then it becomes, really not easy, but easier than creating everything from scratch for sure.
Chris, you said you're an open book before I hit record, and I'm try to be an open book. I'm looking through your book summaries, and I'm it's fair to say Actionable Books is a successful business. Is that fair to say? Before I say what I'm about to say,
yeah, I think there's always the next horizon, but no, I'm pleased, for sure.
Of course, it's cash flow positive. It's providing you with a lifestyle. It's providing a whole lot of people with work.
Yes.
You love what you do. Yes, and yes.
Absolutely.
Cool. Likewise, small business, big marketing, the same. I mean, I love what I do. I cannot believe what it's done for my personal brand, for my business. It's added revenue streams that I never even considered, blah, blah, blah. I personally am underwhelmed by the lack of commentary I get on the show notes of every episode. I know why, because I've asked, and I can tell you why. I too was a bit surprised at the lack of engagement on the page, on the summaries on Actionable Books. Are you?
I think I was, absolutely. I find we'll put up an image on, I don't know, we never do cat images, but you put up an image on the site of some quote or whatever, and that gets, 10 times more comments than the summaries do, right? Because I think people just, it's that bite size, component. What we've really
hang on, are you referring, sorry, are you talking over each other? Are you referring to your Facebook? Was that social media activity you were talking about? Or
That's right.
Was that a content? Okay. Well, I'm talking about content on our websites.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm talking about the fact that, if, I was reading that TED book and that one that I provided a blog comment on, at the end of the summary. And I think I was the 4th person only to have done that. Now, I'm the same with my site, and for a couple of years it really annoyed me, but I went out to my community via Facebook and said, why when I post the fact that there's a new episode out that you don't go to the show notes and leave a comment? And very, very quickly came back in spades that they race off to iTunes or they race off to the website to download and listen to the website. By that time they've left the website and they forget to comment. So listeners, you are excused, but that whole area of engagement and seeing, I love seeing lots of comments on my blog posts, on my episode show notes, and so obviously that's not something of as much of a concern to you.
Well, it was, Tim. And I think, there's that double-sided. One is that genuinely I want to see people getting value from it and interacting with it. And on the other hand, you think, well, what if somebody, like Timbo comes to the site and he looks at it and goes, but nobody's commenting, so maybe it's not a real business. There's that sense of sort of anxiety around optics. What I've found, is that over the last year and a half, I've made a really concentrated focus, the whole team has, around looking at the quality of those, relationships and engagements as much as the quantity or more so. I'll tell you what I mean by that. We've really created little pockets where we have the Actionable Book Club, where groups of 12 people will connect on a call once a month with someone from our team to talk about the books that they've read this month. We have those actionable consultant calls where we'll have 12 to 15 people. We'll do these little sort of micro events. We did an event in Toronto where we had about 40 people, so a little bit larger, but live event. And I'm finding we just sort of scrapped half of our mail list. We said, if you haven't opened an email from us in the last 12 months, we're going to remove you from the list unless you put your hand up and say, I've been in a coma, but I don't want to be removed. We've really concentrated on reducing actually the reach and focus on the quality, appreciating that those are the people that drive 95% of our business anyway. So yeah, it's a good point. I think there's an ego piece of play. There's I don't know why people don't comment.
I think it is. Look, I think it is ego. It's actually me wanting to converse with my listeners. That said, it's the wrong scoreboard, because I know my show's popular. Mm-hmm. I know people benefit, and to me, that's more for me, that's more inspiring. And if I know that there are small business owners listening, implementing, and winning as a result, then that's better than any little comment I get on my blog post. But in the early days, it was me thinking, shit, is there anyone out there?
Yeah, but you're out there too, right? So I mean, you connect with people live, and you're connecting with people that way, which is great. Yeah. Yeah,
correct. Hey, so you went just backtracking to sort of pre-actionable books, or leading up to it. You had a few failures, and then you went and said, okay, I'm going to read a whole lot of business books, and you summarized 52 business books in 52 weeks, applying one concept from each.
That's right. Yeah, it was actually 2 years, but that was the first year, and then slowed down a little bit in year two. Yeah, wow. I mean, what would you like to know?
Really like that? Oh man, where do I start? So you really did do that, and you really did implement. What change did you see from being so military-like in your personal development?
I saw more behavior change I saw more mentality change than behavior change. There's behavior change as a part of it, but I just found my business before had just gone totally down the tubes, and I was blaming everyone else in my life and in the world. There was no personal fault to be had. And through the reading and sort of expansive learning, I'd say, I was picking up whatever cover grabbed me in the bookstore, and I still had bookstores back then. And I would just grab whatever was interesting to me and read it. And so I was applying all these different lessons to, personal growth and marketing and leadership. And I didn't even have a team. I was just learning about leadership. And so I think the biggest thing for me was just the breadth of exposure. Couple of the big ones, Getting Things Done by David Allen, which I'd never read before, found that helpful from a tactics standpoint. There was a book called The 1 Minute Millionaire, which is actually a fairly fluffy book, but there was an idea about just reaching out to people that you aspire to emulate and ask them questions, and so that's really helped on the interview path. And there's a whole range in there.
I got to laugh. I got to laugh about that Dave Allen book, Get Things Done. I had a co-host on this show for the first 80 episodes, a mate called Luke, and Luke loved getting under the bonnet of things, getting in, understanding in micro detail all the various aspects of business and marketing that we talked about on the show. Whereas for me, I like to be more kind of macro, sort of bird's eye view, a little bit more emotional in the kind of questioning. And we had Dave Allen on the show.
Oh yeah.
And Luke almost had a meltdown. It was like having, for me, it'd be like having Bono on the show. Well, Luke had Dave Allen. So listeners, you can go back. I'll put the link in the show notes to this episode to the Dave Allen interview. But it was funny. I remember he was walking around his home talking to us on his iPad, and it was just one of those things where I couldn't bring myself to say, hey, Dave, can you A, move into a room with carpet so there's no bounce in the audio, and B, stop walking around. But it's a fantastic book that even I got across the line with that process. Was there one book, Chris, that you read that changed everything for you?
There's been several, but the big one, I'd say the first one. You can't have
several. You get a sore ass sitting on the fence.
God, all right. Then the one that I would say, the first one that was truly game changing for me was a book called A Whole New Mind by Daniel Pink, who's since gone on to write Drive and To Sell as Human. But that book was instrumental for me.
Why?
It was. What was it? It was a shift in mindset around the skills and attitudes that we need to succeed in the 21st century, which sounds really high level and academic, but it wasn't. I mean, it was an emotional book that got me where, I had the same sort of thought where in order to be successful in business, you needed to have an MBA and understand, business strategy and financial, planning and this sort of thing. And what Dan's book said was, yeah, that's good stuff, but there's a whole other side to this, which we would now maybe call EQ, or, creativity, and that idea of tapping into quote unquote right brain, strengths in business and how beneficial that could be. And for me as a creative sort of person, I thought, yeah, this is the kind of business that I want to do.
Yeah, right. Okay, I love those epiphanies. I hear people talk about, well, you didn't use the word epiphany, but it was a moment that did change everything. Yeah. I wish they could happen more often.
Agreed. Well, I find that they happen most when I push myself out there to explore new things. I think we can increase them by pushing ourselves into new situations, right? One of the reasons why we're in Spain.
Yeah, totally. And being aware, just kind of having the epiphany radar out so that when something, I had one, I sort of wasn't epiphany today, but something happened where I thought, two things happened within the space of about 24 hours. And I'm thinking, the universe is tapping me on the shoulder here. I need to listen to that and act on it, Nice. Mate, I do want to talk about, back to marketing and your blogging, because you were prolific. You were doing these video blogs, and they were good. Two questions. One, mechanical. What did you use to get the split screen thing happening?
So those ones, I used a $30 plugin called Call Recorder on Skype. So it's literally called
does that do it? That's what I've got. That's what I'm recording on. Well, that's what I use. And that does a split screen, does it?
Yeah, you can do picture in picture. You can do split screen. You can record two separate video files. There's a lot of flexibility with it. It's a great tool.
That's hilarious. I did not know. I've been using Call Recorder for, maybe 5 years. I don't do a lot of video. Yeah, well, thank you. I don't do a lot of video, but I have been wanting to do some split screen stuff. So there you go. Great. Why are you moving from video blogging to podcasting?
Part of it's exposure. Part of it is maximizing reach. I'm looking at trends and seeing that, we had some fairly big names on the video series, and, unless the author promoted it heavily, we'd be less than 1,000 views. It's just, I look at other, I basically look at podcasting and see that it's a growing trend. People are starting to understand how it works with, iTunes and whatnot. And so, I thought, let's go where the people are and not just keep shouting in our quiet corner over here.
That is music to my ears. I tell you what, and I say it from stage, I'll say it again now, that we are in such early days of podcasting. We are in podcasting. It's 2 a.m. on day one on the podcasting clock. Like podcasting's been around for about 9 years now, but people are just starting to figure out, in the masses, how to access podcasts. They generally know what they are, because most radio shows these days say at the end, you can find us as a podcast on iTunes. The Stitcher, one of the major distribution apps for podcasts, is now being loaded onto the dashboard of new cars as of 2014. Right. So, man, we are going to see, it's such early days. We are going to see a real tipping point. I'm sort of predicting in the next 12 to 24 months. We might be a little bit slower back here in Australia, but I think as a worldwide phenomenon in marketing, podcasting is set to explode. To that point, you did have some big names on your video blogs. Getting under 1,000 views is heartbreaking. We're talking Seth Godin and Gary Vaynerchuk. Like, mate, how did you get them on to start with?
So Seth and Gary, it's funny you mentioned those two, because they were my very first interviews, and they happened within an hour and a half of each other in New York. And it was, what had happened was a perfect storm where I'd been writing these summaries for a number of years. I'd written most of Seth's books into summaries. I had sent them I made a habit of that. Every time I wrote a summary, I'd send it to the author saying, hey, I know you're busy, but I did this, and if you like it, awesome. That was pretty much it. No ask. Yep. Just here you go. And so Seth and I had a series of one-word email exchanges where, in his sort of classic form, it's thanks, great, bravo, this sort of thing. And I reached out and I said, hey, I know I finished Linchpin is what had happened. And I loved it and I wanted to talk to him about it, and I was done. There was no more books. And so I said, I'd love to talk to you about Linchpin. And if you're up for it, I'll come down to New York. I will, pay my own way, and I'd love to talk to you about what's been happening in your head since? And he wrote back saying, sure, let's do it. And I fell off my chair. But it was one of those things where he was doing this grassroots marketing tour for Linchpin, and he was sort of shunning mainstream media. Yeah. And
great. You got him at the right time.
Exactly
I've shared a couple of times why he knocked me back, so I won't go into it again. You can go and listen to past episodes, listeners. But what about Vaynerchuk? Gary Vaynerchuk, social media doyen.
Yeah. So I was going down to New York because up until the last 4 or 5, they were all live face-to-face interviews. They weren't even split screen. They were on a couch together.
Yep.
And so I reached out to Gary saying, hey, I'm coming down to New York, to interview Seth Godin, because it's always good to name drop when you're doing these things. And, if you're up for it, I'd love to swing by your office. And Gary, if he has time, will pretty much say yes to anything. And, I learned, and I think it's maybe changed as he's become more popular, because this is 5 years ago now. But yeah, so he said sure. And so I basically flew into Newark and went to Midtown, interviewed Gary, jumped in the rental car and blasted up to Yonkers, which is north of Manhattan, and went to Seth's office. And then night and day, man, just
that's
night
brilliant.
and day, the offices and the interview. And yeah, it was pretty funny experience.
Yep. Night and day, as in one was very vastly different to the other.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, just as one small anecdote, I mean, Seth's office is about 2,600 square feet, and it was him and Shita who was collaborating with them on some projects then. And then Gary's office is about half that size with 40 people in it. We had like 10 minutes. There was an MTV crew outside while we were shooting the video in the office, and it was just, sort of pandemonium compared to this almost Zen-like experience in Seth's office as he made us tea.
Oh, I love it. Love it. Oh, that's a great insight. And well done for getting those interviews. I am surprised at just how many people do say yes to being interviewed.
Yeah.
Disappointed that Seth did, but I'll have another crack at some point in time. So
absolutely.
Hey, that's brilliant, Chris. I really a great story. There's a lot we can learn from what you're doing in terms of the creation of content. You're creating it to sell. I encourage my listeners who are vets and plumbers and accountants to create it to help others in the hope that you'll build a tribe and get people emotionally connected to what you do. What's next? What's your kind of next big step for Actionable Books?
I'm coming to Melbourne. I'm heading down. So yeah, it's this Actionable Consultant program, our licensing program, where we work with business coaches and consultants that want to leverage our programs into their business and tap into that community of like-minded peers. It's by far the fastest growing part of our business right now. And one of the big sort of surges of interest came from Australia. And so about 6 months ago, I guess, we started connecting with business coaches and consultants in all across Australia, and found that there was this interest, and so started putting together a class, and we're doing our first ever Australian ACP training class at the end of August.
Love it, mate. Oh, well, tap me on the shoulder. I'll put a link in the show notes to that for this episode, and good luck with that. Great to see such good quality content finding its way down under, and not in New York or some other fancy city.
I'm Canadian.
Hey, mate, I reckon
we've got the connection to the Australian
Well, we have so much
market,
in common. We are brothers.
Exactly.
We are brothers. All right, buddy. Well, listen, I think I can hear Amy yelling in the background that the olives have ripened. The calamatas are ready to be picked. And she's also just sent me a text saying she is infinitely smarter than you, and how dare you talk for so long on Australia's #1 marketing podcast without telling her.
I'll go apologize now, Tim. Thank you.
Chris Taylor, Actionable Books. Thanks for being a part of the show, mate.
My pleasure, man. Thank you.
Righto, team. I hope you loved that interview as much as I loved bringing it to you. Before I share my top 3 learnings from it, I want to let you in on a little secret that smart business owners everywhere are onto. Have you got marketing materials lying around that need a little loving, a little tweaking? Maybe you got some stationery that needs updating, or a logo that needs pimping, or you want to update your social media headers and avatars. Now, that is not a problem at all, thanks to the very good team at Swiftly. For just $19, and less than 1 hour swiftly make small design fixes real fast. That's how they roll. You simply upload the artwork that needs fixing, tell them what needs doing, and bang! 1 hour and $19 later, it's done. Check them out at swiftly.com. That's SWIFTLY. Okay, so my top 3 learnings from that chat with Chris at Actionable Books. Number 1, read more. I don't know about you, but I make a habit of always having one business book on the go. I can never read them in bed at night, so you will not find a business book on my bedside table anymore because I get too stimulated, too excited, and I can never sleep after reading a business book. So often what I'll do is go to a cafe at the start of the day, smash through a little soy latte, and read a little bit of a business book just to get my mind in shape. In fact, I'm reading a book at the moment which I'm considering as a business book. It is absolutely not. It's the biography of Michelangelo called The Agony and the Ecstasy. And what I love about it is his passion for sculpture, his single-mindedness for wanting to pursue the next block of stone, and just incredible. One of the other things I love about it too is he lived for a number of years with the Medici family, and Lorenzo Medici was the richest man, I think, in the world, certainly in Europe at the time in the 15th century. And Lorenzo would bring together all the opinion leaders and people that he wanted to surround himself for great conversation. Every dinner time, it was an open table, and 60 people were invited. They could just go in, sit with Lorenzo, and chew the fat, and he would get around and speak to each one of them. And I thought that's fantastic because, again, as business owners, as business leaders, maybe we don't do that enough, and we're too busy on the business, too busy in the business to be working on the business. But yeah, so The Agony and the Ecstasy is my business book of choice at the moment, biography of Michelangelo. But yeah, point being, read more. You want a book to read? I've mentioned some recently. $100 Startup's good, Blink's good. You got to read Purple Cow by Seth Godin. There's just 3 to get you going, but there's so many different great business books out there. I must do a blog post on one very soon. Number 2, learning from Chris, trip and fall and then get back up. You know, we do all fail, and you got 2 choices when you fail: wallow in your misery or get back on your horse. And the good ones amongst us, we get back on our horse. And I know many of you do too. Forum member, Vineyard Paul, right now, just reading a forum post. He's trying to get a podcast up. He's been kicked in the head a couple of times by potential guests who have said no to him, kind of losing a bit of faith in the whole thing, but he's back on his horse. He's motivated to do it again. A lot of the forum members were kind of encouraging him, giving him tips and ways of moving forward with it. And I was just reading a post from him this morning where he's no longer discouraged, and he's going to get back on his horse and keep moving forward. The good ones do, hey? Setbacks are great, like I had at the REIV conference earlier this week. That was a setback. I could have had a meltdown. There was a point where I'm going, wow, this is going to be a disaster for the REIV, for me, my personal brand, because they're going to go, oh, Timbo just stuffed his keynote. It wasn't my fault, but it was my problem. Instead, I chose to see a positive, find a quick solution, and it worked. I hope you can find the strength to do that too if you're listening in a bit of a downtime in your business. Number 3, look for people smarter than you. Chris's wife, he said she's lots smarter than him. As business owners, finding good people is hard. Keeping good people is harder, but you've got to find people smarter than you. If you build a brand, if you build a helpful business, if you build a business that people love to work at because it's got cool marketing, or you're doing helpful marketing, or you've just built this really nice equity in your brand that people want to be a part of, and you don't have to be a big business to do this, by the way, then you are going to succeed. And I've always taken the attitude that you need people smarter than you. If you're the smartest in your business, then maybe you should drop the ego and go and find a highly intelligent person to challenge you on a more regular basis. So they're my top 3 learnings from my chat with Chris. If you've got something that you learned, then head over to smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and look for episode 199. And we also talk about every episode inside the Small Business Big Marketing Forum. So feel free to jump in there over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com and click on the forum button. Righto, team, that almost brings us to the end of this week's episode from a car in Queenstown, New Zealand. Couple of things. Yeah, 200th episode coming up next week. No big deal, but I do have a little surprise guest. Life got in the way in terms of doing anything, as you know, for a live event. We'll do one in the coming months or, at some point in time when life isn't so busy and I aren't travelling as much. But I do have a nice little surprise guest. I know you're all going to enjoy hearing from him or her next week. I've got an episode of Funny Business coming up with our old mate Griffo. I'll be speaking to a fellow who's making good coin from reviewing frozen foods. Can you believe it? That's right. And plenty more guests. Even got some really exciting sponsor news to come up in the coming weeks as well. Hey, listen, join the forum if you want to continue the marketing discussion over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. Remember, Net Registry are there to get your online marketing sorted. Just tell them Timbo sent you over at netregistry.com.au. And if you have any small design fixes needed to be done real quick, visit the guys at swiftly.com. Until next week, may your marketing be the best marketing. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Small Business Big Marketing Show with Tim Reid. Want more marketing goodness? Then visit smallbusinessbigmarketing.com.